Imagine you're sitting inside a metal tube at 26,000 feet altitude. There are 66 people around you, mostly families traveling for vacation. Outside, it's 40 degrees cold. The plane is flying at 500 kilometers per hour. Everything seems normal until you hear a tense voice from the pilot's cabin. "We are declaring an emergency." This was the terrifying reality experienced by 67 people on Azerbaijan Airlines flight J28243 on Christmas morning, December 25, 2024. What should have been a routine domestic flight from Baku to Grozny, lasting only 1 hour and 20 minutes, would turn into a tragic event that would make headlines in world media just hours later. Why did this plane crash 400 kilometers away from its intended destination, on the opposite shore of the Caspian Sea? What did the pilots experience in their final moments? And, most importantly, was this just an accident? Or was there a darker truth underlying it? Today we're diving deep into one of modern aviation's most mysterious crashes. This isn't just a story about a plane crash, it's also the story of how geopolitical tensions cast shadows over civil aviation, the limits of technology, and the role of human factors in critical moments. Fasten your seatbelts, because this journey won't be easy at all. The aircraft at the center of the incident is an Embraer 190 with tail number 4KAZ65. This aircraft type is an extremely reliable machine designed for medium-range regional flights. This airplane, an engineering marvel from Brazilian manufacturer Embraer, has approximately 100 passenger capacity, and thousands have been produced worldwide. This particular aircraft, manufactured in 2013, has been safely serving in Azerbaijan Airlines fleet for 11 years and has never experienced any serious incidents. Until today. The aircraft's technical specifications are impressive. 2 CFM56 engines, state-of-the-art avionics system, advanced autopilot, and weather radar. This aircraft can theoretically fly safely even in the most challenging weather conditions. In the cockpit are 2 experienced pilots, Captain Igor Kshinyakin and First Officer Alexander Kalyaninov. Captain Kshinyakin is an experienced aviator with over 15,000 hours of flight experience. The 52-year-old Kshinyakin has been flying since the Soviet era and is a professional who has dealt with all kinds of difficult situations. In the final years of his career, the captain is planning retirement in 2 years to spend more time with his family. Married and father of 2 children, Kshinyakin is described by his friends as calm and analytical. Alongside him, 34-year-old First Officer Alexander Kalyaninov is in the bright period of his career. Kalyaninov, who has 4,500 flight hours, got married last year and his wife is pregnant. He's known as a determined professional who tries to learn something from every flight and works hard to become a captain. The cabin crew consists of 3 people, Chief Flight Attendant Haygun Rahimova and 2 experienced flight attendants. There are 62 passengers on board the aircraft. Most of the passengers are Azerbaijani and Russian citizens, families traveling for vacation, professionals on business trips, people visiting loved ones, and students returning home for Christmas vacation. The youngest passenger is 2 years old. The oldest is 76 years old. The planned route is quite simple. Take off from Baku, fly approximately 450 kilometers north to land in Grozny. Under normal conditions, a flight of 1 hour and 20 minutes. The weather initially appears normal. At 7:55 local time in the morning, J28243 takes off from Baku Haydar Aliyev Airport. The takeoff is smooth. The aircraft climbs to the planned FL 260 level, that is 26,000 feet altitude. The first 40 minutes, everything proceeds normally. The crew follows routine procedures, passengers are comfortable. Normal air traffic control conversations are heard on aviation radios. However, At this time, a problem that no one in the cockpit has yet noticed begins to grow. Around 9 o'clock, when the aircraft begins to descend to approach Grozny Airport, normal procedures are suddenly interrupted. Grozny Air Traffic Control delivers an unexpected and disturbing message. Azerbaijan 8243 Grozny Airport is currently not operational. We are offering you alternative airports. This point is the beginning of all tragic events. Confusion dominates the cockpit. Captain Kshniakin immediately checks the weather report. There's no apparent serious meteorological problem. So then why is the airport closed? What's the reason for the closure? Asks First Officer Kalyaninov over the radio. The response is vague. Due to operational restrictions, we're giving you alternative route information. Such situations occur in aviation. Airports can be temporarily closed due to technical problems, weather, or even security reasons. But this time there's something different. The controller's voice is more tense than normal. The answers are shorter and more evasive than standard procedures. The tower suggests Zaqatala and Minrel-Niebody airports as alternatives. However, the pilots make a quick calculation. Current fuel status, passenger comfort, and weather conditions are evaluated. At this point, a critical decision needs to be made. Now, what would you think in this situation if you were there? Would you choose the suggested nearby alternative or a completely different route? The pilots make a different choice. Aktau. This airport, located in Kazakhstan, is on the opposite shore of the Caspian Sea, in a completely different direction from the original. Why is this choice made? Perhaps fuel economy, perhaps weather advantage, perhaps other factors. Here, a tremendous navigation change occurs. The aircraft makes a complete turn from its original route in a different direction, westward over the Caspian Sea to Kazakh. At 9:15, this new route is confirmed. However, at this time, something critically important that has not been noticed until now begins to happen on the aircraft. Around 9:20, while flying over the Caspian Sea, the situation suddenly and dramatically worsens. Try to imagine this moment at 26,000 feet altitude over blue water. Suddenly, the aircraft begins to behave uncontrollably. Although cockpit voice recordings have not yet been fully disclosed, intense and excited communication begins between the crew. According to information obtained from the aircraft's flight data recorder, sudden and unexpected parametric changes are occurring. Captain Kshniakin's voice on the radio. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Azerbaijan 8243. We are experiencing control problems. We are declaring an emergency. This thrice-repeated Mayday call is the most serious emergency signal in aviation. When pilots say this word, they know the situation has reached life-threatening levels. What exactly is happening on the aircraft during these critical moments? From videos taken by passengers, cell phone recordings, and witness statements given afterward, we learned this. The aircraft begins making abnormal and uncontrolled maneuvers, swaying left and right. Oxygen masks suddenly drop in the cabin. This usually indicates sudden pressure loss. Some passengers notice suspicious damage on the aircraft's exterior, especially wing and fuselage sections. Severe vibration and shaking affects the cabin. Panic begins among passengers. Children are crying. Although flight attendants try to maintain calm, the seriousness of the situation can be read in their eyes. One of the most striking witnesses is the testimony of Subonkal Rahimov, sitting in seat 12A and recording the incident with his cell phone. Strange sounds were coming from the right side of the aircraft, as if metal pieces were hitting each other. When I looked out the window, I saw something abnormal at the tip of the wing. Imagine, at 26,000 feet altitude, inside a metal tube. in a machine that's beginning to lose control. Fear on the faces of people around you, children's screams, increasingly tense voices coming from the pilot cabin. What's happening in the cockpit at this time? Captain Kuzhnagin and First Officer Kalyaninov are using all of their 15 years of training and thousands of hours of experience for this moment. The emergency checklist is opened. Every system is checked, one by one. Hydraulics, check. Flight controls, check. Engines, check. Everything is systematically reviewed. However, the picture they find is not encouraging. December 25th, 2024, 11:28 local time. About 3 kilometers from Aktau Airport, the terrible moment comes. The aircraft completely loses control during final approach to the runway. Witness videos show this. The Embraer 190 enters a spiral dive at almost a 90-degree angle. That is, with its wing almost parallel to the ground. These final seconds are what aviation calls an unrecoverable situation, critical moments that are unrecoverable. The laws of physics are now stronger than the pilot's skills. A large explosion occurs when the aircraft hits the ground. However, miraculously, the tail section of the aircraft remains relatively intact, and this saves the lives of 29 people. For approximately 1 hour, the pilots wage a tremendous struggle. This 1 hour constitutes one of the most dramatic examples of airmanship in modern aviation history. With a partially out-of-control aircraft, they try to get 62 innocent people to safety. As the aircraft approaches Aktau Airport, it becomes increasingly clear how critical the situation is. Looking at ADS-B data, that is, automatic signals showing the aircraft's position and status, this picture emerges. Altitude control is at a critically difficult level. Speed fluctuates wildly between 180 and 350 knots. Heading constantly changes. The aircraft cannot maintain a stable course. Angle, that is the aircraft's lateral tilt, exceeds normal limits. The pilots try to bring the aircraft under control in a final effort. At this point, they face one of the most difficult decisions in aviation. Should they try to land in this condition or make an emergency landing over the sea? The last contact from Aktau Tower. Azerbaijan 8243. Approach clearance given for runway 11. Wind 90 degrees 12 knots. QNH 1013. Emergency vehicles are ready. This last radio conversation shows how professional aviators continue to follow procedures until their final moments. The controllers also know what will happen, but continue to perform their duties. At this point, the aircraft begins to descend, but the approach is nothing like what's written in any manual. The aircraft is swaying excessively left and right, as if being shaken like a toy by an invisible giant. Normal approach angle should be about 3 degrees. This aircraft is descending at a much steeper angle. If you were there, would you try to land with a partially out-of-control aircraft, or would you make a controlled crash over the sea? This is a decision that must be made in seconds, but has infinite consequences. According to the last ADS-B data, the flight pattern displayed by the aircraft in its final minutes is as follows. Altitudes: sudden drop from 8,000 feet to 2,000 feet. Speed: sudden decrease from 280 knots to 150 knots. Heading: 270, 310, 250, 340, constantly changing directions. Rate of descent: minus 2,000 FPM. Instead of normal, 500 FPM. These numbers reveal the desperation in the cockpit and the pilots' struggle in their final moments. December 25, 2024, 11:28 local time. About 3 kilometers from Aktau airport, the terrible moment occurs before the world's eyes. Witness videos record that moment second by second. The Embraer 190 completely loses control during final approach. This is now the moment when not pilot skill, but the laws of physics dominate. Imagine this scene. In the sky at almost a 90-degree angle, that is, with its right wing almost parallel to the ground, the aircraft enters a spiral dive, as if being pulled downward by an invisible force. Such movements are called unrecoverable spin in aviation. Irrecoverable spinning. Testimonies from ground witnesses are horrifying. The plane was spinning like a leaf. The engine sounds were very different, not normal. These final seconds are what aviation knows as the point of no return. Critical moments of no return. There's nothing the pilots can do anymore. The laws of physics are stronger than the pilot skills. Think about the final moments of Captain Kishnyakin and First Officer Kalyananov. With their 15,000 hours of experience, they try to save the lives of 67 people with their last strength. In the cockpit, there are alarm sounds, system failure warnings, but 2 professionals who never give up. A large explosion and fire occurs when the aircraft hits the ground. The impact is so violent that the major portion of the aircraft breaks into pieces. However, and this is truly miraculous, the tail section of the aircraft remains relatively intact. This tail section saves the lives of 29 people. Modern aircraft design safety philosophy shows itself here. The rear part of the aircraft is designed to provide more protection during crashes. Although the explosion and fire are terrible, there are people to be rescued. This is the only ray of hope within the tragedy. Immediately after the crash, Kazakh emergency response teams rush to the scene with extraordinary speed. Fire department, ambulance, police, everyone moves into action at the same time. There are sounds coming from among the flames and smoke. There are survivors. This rescue operation shows how important modern emergency response systems are. Kazakh teams are trained to international standards and prepared for such situations. 29 people are rescued. The vast majority of them were sitting in the tail section of the aircraft. Among those rescued are, surprisingly, children as well. An 11-year-old girl, a 16-year-old youth, evidence of how fragile life is, but at the same time, how resilient. Some of those taken to hospitals are in serious condition, burns, fractures, trauma. However, medical teams continue to save lives working day and night. Unfortunately, 38 people, including all cockpit crew members, lost their lives in this tragic event. Captain Igor Kishnyakin, First Officer Alexander Kalyananov, cabin crew, and 33 passengers. Each one a life story, each one someone beloved, each one an unfinished dream. One of the most heartbreaking details. First Officer Kalyananov's wife learns of her husband's death at the hospital during her own pregnancy checkup. Captain Kishnyakin's children learned that their father was a hero in his final mission, that he fought until his last moment to save the lives of 29 people. Immediately after the crash, a comprehensive investigation begins. Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and international aviation authorities conduct joint work. However, the emerging theories take this crash far beyond an ordinary technical failure. Theory 1, technical failure. Initial evaluations focus on technical failure. Possibilities include critical failure in the aircraft's hydraulic systems. In this case, pilot controls become inoperative. Electronic problems in flight control systems. Failure in computers that are the brain of modern aircraft. Engine failure or fire. This can also lead to loss of control. Structural fatigue. accumulated damage during the aircraft's 11 years of service. Theory 2. External impact, most controversial. However, very soon, a much darker theory is put forward. Photographs of damage on the aircraft's exterior show traces resembling shrapnel marks. According to this theory, the aircraft may have been affected by air defense systems when approaching Grozny Airport. A friendly fire situation may have occurred due to increased military activity in the region recently. This situation could explain the aircraft being diverted from Grozny and redirected to Aktau. Why is this theory taken so seriously? Because the sudden closure of Grozny Airport cannot be explained. The damage patterns on the aircraft's fuselage are suspicious. There has been military tension in the region recently. Similar incidents have occurred in the past. MH17, Ukraine International Airlines, PS 752. Theory 3. Meteorological factors. The third theory focuses on invisible weather factors. Severe turbulence clear. Air turbulence not visible on radar. Microbursts. Sudden air current changes. Ice formation. Critical icing on the aircraft's control surfaces. The black box analysis. The aircraft's black boxes, actually bright orange colored, were found and are being analyzed. These boxes contain cockpit voice recorder, all pilot conversations from the last 2 hours, flight data, recorder, more than 300 flight parameters. These analyses may take months, but they contain critical information that could reveal the real cause of the crash. Which theory is correct? No one knows for certain right now. However, developing clues suggest that this crash may be much more complex than an ordinary technical failure. The Azerbaijan Airlines J28243 crash painfully reveals what a complex world modern aviation is. An aircraft with 67 people that took off from Baku as a routine domestic flight at 7:55 in the morning crashes 400 kilometers away from its planned route, 3.5 hours later. This crash teaches us many things. Aviation safety is never guaranteed. Modern aircraft are incredibly safe, statistically the safest means of transportation. However, this crash reminds us that aviation still struggles with human factors, technical limits, and unforeseeable situations. The impact of geopolitical situations on civil aviation. If the external impact theory is true, this crash shows that civil aviation can be an innocent victim of geopolitical tensions. Civilian aircraft should not remain in the shadow of military conflicts. Violent heroism. The final moments of Captain Kishnyakin and First Officer Kalyaninov may be one of the greatest examples of heroism in aviation history. Struggling with a partially out-of-control aircraft for 1 hour, saving the lives of 29 people, this shows the power of pilot training and professionalism. The importance of modern aircraft design. The rescue of 29 people proves how critical the safety features of modern aircraft design are. The fact that the tail section of the Embraer 190 was more durable saved many families from being orphaned. The value of emergency response systems. The quick and professional intervention of Kazakh emergency response teams played a critical role in the survival of the 29 people rescued. This crash will probably lead to new safety protocols in the aviation industry, pilot training programs, and perhaps regulations for protecting civil aviation from military operations. The investigation continues, and when the real causes become clear, perhaps a new era in aviation safety will begin. The loss of these 38 lives is painful, but in their memory, it is our responsibility to make aviation safer. Remember, every aircraft accident provides valuable lessons to make thousands of future flights safer. Aviation history is full of safety barriers, built on tragedies. We await comments from you viewers. Which theory about this crash do you think is more convincing? What are your suggestions for aviation safety? In our next video, we will examine another aviation incident in depth. Don't forget to subscribe, press the bell icon, and comments.